Tons of songs have 16th timekeeping sort of grooves that require you to do that two-stroke MOELLER technique with your right hand. It's safe to say this is something that we want to and honestly need to master as drummers. But have you had trouble getting your hand to master this whole two for the price of one motion that ought to become autopilot, but maybe it's just not? Has it been difficult getting it up to speed where you can actually use it in a song? Today we're solving this in a unique way. I'm going to teach you one of the original 26 rudiments that actually has the power to solve MOELLER, the technique and the motion we use for MOELLER, and also the technique and the motion that we use to play ghost notes in a groove. This is really interesting, really cool. It's a very versatile method that I think you're going to have a lot of fun with. You can do this. Hey, welcome to The Non-Glamorous Drummer. I'm all about helping you become the drummer everybody wants to play with, the musical, confident drummer who is reaching their goals and becoming the musician that they're made to be, reaching their fullest potential on the drums. That's what I want for you. And hey, I bet you want to nail grooves, you want to nail fills, you want to be able to just sit down and play songs, no problem. But for many of us, there's a big obstacle standing in the way, and it's that we have a weak hand. You've got a weak hand that's just kind of wreaking havoc, honestly, on everything you play because it's messing up your fills and keeping your fills from being smooth. It's keeping your backbeats from being steady, and it's resulting in kind of your playing being one-sided, and you know you're not reaching your fullest potential because of that left hand. And the worst thing is that maybe it's been so long that you're kind of just settling for it. You're kind of just realizing, you know what, maybe my left hand isn't as capable as my right. Oh well, that's fine. That's a really sad place to be, and I don't want that for you. You can overcome your weak hand. You can do this. Here's how. I want you to join my totally free mini course. It's called Eliminate Your Weak Hand in 3 Steps. This is a solution that has been helping so many of my one-on-one students. Super transformative method where first we break down the nuance of grip mechanics. A lot of times there's just something subtle, tiny little issue maybe going on with that left hand, and once you fix it, suddenly things feel a lot better. We talk about building hand-to-hand coordination, and there's so many tips for just freeing up that left hand so that you can become ambidextrous on the drums. That's the goal. That's what we want to do here. So join the course. It's totally free. It's going to help you out a whole bunch and even help you with what we're talking about today in today's lesson. The link is at the top of the description, so go dive in right there. All right, on with today's lesson. I'll start by teaching you exactly what this rudiment is and what the motion is involved in playing it that MOELLER and ghosting have in common. This is pretty interesting. So first we'll talk about this rudiment that does solve MOELLER and ghosting, and then we'll talk about how this rudiment makes MOELLER easy. We'll talk about how this rudiment gives you dynamic control for ghosting and grooves, and then we'll wrap up by tying all this together and finding out that, okay, there's really one common thing that we need to get really good at that makes us good at this rudiment as well as MOELLER and ghosting. So this is really interesting lesson. Let's dig in. Here's what the rudiment is. Flams. Just traditional flams, just like you'd see on your Vic Firth rudiment poster. If you Google the original 26 rudiments, you scroll through them, you're going to find flams. That's where we're playing a super soft ghost note with, say, left hand, and then an accent with the right hand, like that. And if we were to play just this way, like just accenting the right hand each time, it would be like this. Just like that, or the other way around, where maybe we accent the left hand, we do the ghost note, the grace note with the right hand. So it sounds very orchestral, very like marching snare. Sounds very rudimental, and that's what it's used for most of the time. Now, this doesn't appear to have anything to do with MOELLER or ghosting at first glance, but when you look at what the rudiment actually is, the rudiment is not just this. That's just half of it. If we actually play the rudiment as it's originally written, we're switching back and forth between right, left, and so each time, each hand is trading off between playing the accent and playing the grace note, that little ghost note. And so if we actually play the full rudiment, it looks like this. Which is interesting because now we're having to choke out the accent to then play a ghost note right after. Because if we go there, well, now we've got to quiet down the right hand and then go there. So we're actually having to choke out each accent so that our sticks are always landing down here. And this spot right here becomes our home base. Now, as we go faster, look at what starts to happen. look at what motion each hand is doing. It's really just a loud, soft, loud, soft. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to start the rudiment very slowly, slow flams, and then we're going to get faster. And so that's all that it is. It's that it becomes that motion. So the very interesting thing here to me, and there's so many things we can talk about here. I'll say this first. You've heard me say on the channel, don't practice rudiments, practice the drums. Spend time on your drums, making music, playing grooves. We want to develop pocket. We want to develop time. That's way more important than sitting here and practicing your rudiments. And I still stand by that. There are certain rudiments, though, that you do need to learn as a drum set player. First one being singles, obviously, and then doubles, and then paradiddles. So those I would consider those to be the 3 essential rudiments that every drum set player needs to learn. And you really can't do doubles until you've done singles well. And singles are essential for playing anything on the drums. So, of course, that's important. And paradiddles come together really well once you've learned your doubles. And I think a good 4th rudiment to do is actually flams because of this motion that you have to learn. Now, what's interesting, so we know that, okay, if we want to practice MOELLER, we've got to do this same kind of motion right here, just like we did with the flams. And if we want to practice ghosting, we actually want to do that same kind of motion too. We'll go into a little more detail with that in a minute. But the whole purpose of the original rudiments was to basically teach a drummer all of the mechanics and the motions and the techniques that were needed to pretty much play anything. And so what that means is that if you were to only practice rudiments, which I wouldn't advise because it's not very musical and it's not very fun, and a lot of times you lose motivation if you're just focusing on rudiments before playing the drums. That's a big reason why I believe in not focusing on rudiments. But if that were all that you did, say you went to percussion lessons, or you went to classical percussion school and you're doing a lot of the rudiments and things like that, well, learning those rudiments are going to teach you the valuable skills you need on the drums for playing MOELLER, for playing quickly, for playing lightly, loudly, for doing all sorts of different kinds of things, because that's what the rudiments do. The idea is that they are building blocks. They're kind of like an alphabet, a kind of building block where you can learn all these techniques and all these skills and put all those things together and be able to play whatever you want to play. That's the whole idea. And so flams are one of those rudiments that's actually very powerful, and it's going to help you do that. So what I'm presenting to you today is an option. You can practice your flams and practice doing this, and this is going to give you the skills you need for MOELLER and ghosting. But where we want to go with this now is breaking this down in even more detail, because what tends to happen is when you're diving into a rudiment, it's easy to get lost just in, okay, making sure I'm playing the rudiment right. But if we zero in even closer, we see that, okay, there's a motion happening here in the flams, and that motion is just loud, soft, loud, soft, loud, soft, loud, soft. And so that's what we want to focus on. So what we can do is break this down and focus on that MOELLER motion, which is going to help us with the flams. And then we can dig into the ghosting motion too, that we'll talk about in a minute. And then you can go back to the flams, continue working the flams, knowing that there's something simple you can practice on your pad that's working out both hands, not just right, not just left, and that's going to translate to doing MOELLER. So I love things that are all-encompassing like this, and that's exactly what this is. So as we dig into MOELLER, there's a couple different approaches we can take to this, but if we focus on just, all right, loud, soft, that means we're kind of choking out the rebound a little bit. Instead of allowing the stick to pop all the way back up, we're going. Otherwise, it's really hard to play a soft note after a loud one if you don't choke that rebound. And so as far as how much you choke that, well, that's going to determine the volume of the soft note. If you go and bring the stick back into position here, that soft note can be really soft. And I think that's a good way to practice this starting out when you're going slow, just to aim for that dynamic contrast. What'll happen though, as you start going faster, the motion is going to become more fluid, because when we're going really slow, you see that I hit, the stick bounces to about here, and then I bring it to here. And then I play that soft note. So it's kind of multiple steps going on. As we go faster though, those get blurred together and it becomes more like this. Where after it bounces, I'm slowing it down to then gently hit the head. So first it looks like this when I'm going really slow. Individual, okay, hit, bounce, choke, bring it into here to play the soft note. But as we go faster, And we can use that up and down motion to help with that, because if we go down, up, that up motion helps us with playing that next note softly. Down, up, down, up, down, up. And so that's the other approach you can take to this when you're going very slow. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So basically those are your two options for practicing this. You can either focus on going choke, tap, choke, tap, choke, tap, choke, tap, which is a very rigid motion and has to morph as you go faster. Or right off the bat, you can go down, up, down, up, down, up. And that way it's that up motion that's slowly bringing the stick down to the head. Down, up, down, up. And then you can start getting into this bounce like this. This should feel very natural. And so once you can get this going with either hand, then you're ready to do the flams. Now the flams add the additional challenge of the fact that you have to do a flam, because you're not doing where you want them to hit together like that. You want them to be slightly offset. So that's where you want to do it very slowly. And so that's why I think it's worth practicing that molar motion on its own and then bringing that into the flam scenario after practicing the flams very slowly, which would be focusing on that spacing of the notes. Odds are, though, if you're having trouble with the dynamics there and playing those grace notes very softly, it's because there's an issue going on with choking out the stick and doing that. And so that's why you want to focus that individually. So basically we've isolated that component of when we're doing flams, that component of choking out the rebound so that we can then play that light note, which is what we use playing molar also. Something else I definitely have to add is that we don't want to use our fingers yet. This is very much a wrist motion, and that's something that I know this can get kind of confusing, because we generally want to use our fingers when we're going faster, and we use our fingers when we're playing fast doubles. But ultimately, molar is more of a wrist-driven motion. It's kind of that piston-like motion, that up and down. And even as we're going fast, fingers aren't actively driving the stick. They're following the stick. And so when you see me going faster, it kind of looks like maybe fingers are doing something, but they're not actively driving the stick. They're just following it. They're there so that you might see them moving. The fingers are definitely not static. They are moving, but they're not driving the motion. It's that up and down motion that's driving it. And so you'll see how my fulcrum is becoming a little bit firmer as I'm going faster too. So it's very much this wrist motion. Same thing with right hand. And so it's okay to firm up your fulcrum and shift from a very loose kind of grip to more like this with like an index finger kind of grip, because it's this up and down wrist motion that's driving it. And so that's definitely an important thing to note too. Know that this is a wrist motion, that up and down kind of piston motion is what drives it, not the fingers, even though we want to keep some looseness in the hand here so that fingers are following the stick. We don't want to be totally tight, but we don't have to be wide open and loose either. We want to find that sweet spot in between. Now, I've kept alluding to ghosting. So whenever we want to play ghost notes in a groove, we're generally having to mix those ghost notes with accents. If we're playing a groove with a backbeat, boom, boom, ba, boom, 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 ba, 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 boom, ba, digga, digga, da, ba. With whatever little ghost notes we want to throw in there, the ghost notes have to be very soft, but the backbeats have to be loud, right? And if the ghost notes are too loud, the groove just feels too busy and too sloppy. Which, by the way, if you're playing a groove with ghost notes and maybe the feedback you're getting from a bandmate is, man, that groove's just feeling too busy, it just feels like there's too many notes there, it might not necessarily be that you're playing too many ghost notes. It might be that your ghost notes are too loud. Because sometimes ghost notes just need to be felt more than heard. And so what can help a lot is just going softer with them, playing the ghost notes as softly as you can and the backbeats louder. A lot of times that's the balance you want to have. And the technique required for doing that is the whip choke motion that we talked about at the beginning of talking about flams, and it's the same thing that we're doing if we play a very slow kind of molar in a way. Specifically, we want to go, as soon as we hit, we're choking it out, bringing the stick to right here, an inch above the head, and then gentle tap. And then if we want to play a ghost note before that loud note, then we're literally just going tap, lift, bam, 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 And as long as we're choking right after, we can then play soft, loud, soft, soft, loud, soft, soft, loud, soft, soft, loud, soft, soft, loud, soft. Remember that in order to do that choking motion, you have to clamp down on the stick. It's okay to forfeit the loose grip. I always wanted you to have loose grip, but you have to firm up and you have to override the rebound. We're having to override the laws of physics here in order to do this. Bum, 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 bum. But practice making that accent loud and making the ghost notes as soft as possible by keeping the stick as close to the head as possible. And so that means as soon as you hit, you're clamping down on the stick, firm fulcrum here, bum, 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 bum. And remember, you're loosening up though, and you're allowing the stick to swing up to play that loud note, bum, bum. We're choking back down again. So there we have that same motion allowing us to then play ghost notes, which is really cool. So let's do a little bit of review here. There's a common motion that all of these patterns, rhythms, contexts, whatever you want to call them, have. So when we're doing the flams, we've got that loud, soft kind of thing going on, bum, 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 bum. When we're doing molar, we've got the loud, soft, loud, soft, loud, soft. When we're playing ghost notes, same kind of thing, but maybe even to more of an extreme where we want to choke it out even more to then play that super soft kind of sound. So not all of these are identical, but they're all very similar. They're all in the same family of motion. And so if you master one of these, it's going to carry over into the others. So here's what I want you to practice. If this is totally new to you, if doing molar is new to you, if doing ghost notes is new to you, if flams are new to you, I definitely don't want this to be too complicated. I don't want this to be just way too much information and you're struggling to sort through it. What I want you to do to start out with is just do the loud, soft, loud, soft. Practice that. Make that the first thing you do, which is what you need to do in order to play the ghost notes. And so you'll find you're quickly able to play better ghost notes as you start learning to control that left hand, because if we're talking ghost notes, we're probably dealing with left hand, versus molar, we're probably dealing with right hand. But what's cool is that as you're working all this, you end up doing both hands together. That's what I want you to do. Don't just practice right hand or left hand, be doing this with both hands. And so practice doing this motion, and then allow yourself to just get a little quicker with it and let it become more of a fluid kind of motion with a down, up, so that then that drop choke can morph into molar, where it really does become a 2 for the price of 1 because that second note is happening on an upstroke. Down, up, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I'm just thinking about bump, 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 and the in-between notes are kind of just happening on their own, and that's exactly what we want. And so focus on that, and as you can get more comfortable with that, not just with your right hand, but also with your left hand, then you can visit flams and practice going very slowly at first, focusing on that spacing between the notes, keeping the grace note soft, the accent loud, all the while choking things out right afterwards so that you're bringing your sticks right back to this position. Then as you get more comfortable with this and you start going faster, it kind of starts becoming that fluid motion that we use in molar, where it's no longer a rigid choke, choke, choke. It kind of just becomes an up and down. All the while focusing on stick height, even from hand to hand. You don't have to go crazy fast with this, but know that this is a rudiment where once you put this together, once you're able to just practice the flams, you can use this to really work on evening out your hands. It's a great weak hand exercise, a great way to focus on just doing the same thing with each hand, alternating back and forth. It builds a lot of hand-to-hand coordination, which is extremely practical, extremely important for us as drummers. So pick your path. Pick what you want to focus on practicing, because if you're one of those people that loves like learning the mechanics of a new rudiment, here you've got it. Focus on flams. It's a great one. If you like the simplicity of just focusing on that down, up, focus on molar and use that to improve your flams. Or if you want to take the focus of ghost notes, which especially targets your left hand at first, primarily, because that's probably the hand you're going to be using for the ghost notes, start with that. Drop, choke, and ideally practice all these things and so that they can work together, so that they can all build up, so that your flams can get really solid. But either way, you've got some solid stuff to practice here. You've got things to improve your right hand molar speed. You've got a strategy for improving left hand ghost notes and left hand molar speed if you want to play open-handed, which is really cool also. And if you're practicing the flams, it's going to really balance out your hands. Now, I mentioned earlier my weak hand mini course, Eliminate Your Weak Hand in 3 Steps. This is a really important prerequisite because if you're having any issue whatsoever with your grip, you feel like you don't have a good fulcrum, things are too stiff, things aren't working, especially with your weak hand, you need to dig into these lessons because weak hand is a serious problem that many of us have ignored for too long. And the sad thing is that so many drummers go years and even decades without addressing that weak hand, and they start to assume that their weak hand is just not as capable as their strong hand. Because after so many years of it, you kind of just assume that, okay, this hand does this and this hand does that, rather than both hands being equal and able to do the same thing. But if your right hand is able to do this, shouldn't your left hand be able to do the same? Wouldn't that be logical to assume? I believe so, and I believe you can get your left hand just as strong as your right. You can master your weak hand when you know the exact steps to practice, the right things to target. In this course, we talk about the mechanics, the details. Sometimes there's little things we overlook that are simple. And then we talk about hand-to-hand coordination and exercises for really pulling this together and mastering it. You can do this. I know that you can do this because this is a transformative method I've taught to my one-on-one students, and they get some tremendous results from this. So the course is totally free. It's a no-brainer. Dig in. That's really going to help you out a lot with what we covered today. Hey, as always, thanks so much for hanging out with me today, guys. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. I hope you're able to grow a lot through this. I hope that this was challenging to you, but also very practical, very simple, so you know exactly what to practice. Dig into that mini course. The link is at the top of the description, and also subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week. I will see you on the next lesson. Know that you can do this. Stay non-glamorous.